Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Intermediate Chess course. Hope you've been enjoying some of the videos I've been sending out to you. Today we're going to again start with a puzzle and then go on to a game that I feel is quite relevant to intermediate players in terms of the opening. We've looked a little bit at some endgame themes, but I think we need to look a little bit more in depth at a very popular opening that some of you guys play. Okay, let's start with the puzzle first. I'm just going to share my screen, so you should be able to see that now. Okay, so going back to the ideas of these tactics, so things like forks, pins, skewers, discovered attacks, I would also add the concept of undefended pieces to this list. Now, if you can find any undefended pieces on your opponent's part of the board, then what you can sometimes do is either attack or even capture them if you're lucky. You might hear me refer to this as free lunch. Now, free lunch on a chessboard is when you can snack on one of your opponent's pieces. So, for example, you can capture it for free. Now, have a look at this position. Imagine you're playing as white here. Is there anything that you could take for free? You can pause the video. Well, yeah, there's this move. You could do queen takes pawn, because that's an undefended piece, and I think that would be a perfectly good move. Nothing wrong with that at all. What I'll do, though, is show you an alternative. Now, there's also a trick that white could do. Again, think about those four possibilities. I'll repeat it one more time. Forks, pins, skewers, and discovered attacks. Can you find one for white? I think there's one. There's this move. So bishop across to b5. Okay, and this is the move that was played in this scenario. Okay, notice that we could, if we wanted, take black's knight, but then that would be replaced by the queen or the rook. So that's not an undefended piece. That would just be a fair swap, basically. I'm going to switch the board round now. Okay, and you should be able to see this from black's point of view. So white has done a fork on us, okay, which is bad news because, especially with such high value pieces, we've got to try and solve quite a serious problem, because if we move our queen, then white will take this rook worth 5 points, and yes, we can probably get it back, but we would lose 2 points overall. So what we need to do is think back to what I was mentioning last lesson. Often with threats, there are sort of more simple ways of dealing with them. So, for example, capturing the attacking piece, protecting your pieces that are being attacked, perhaps, or running away. Now, yes, we could capture the bishop, but then this queen will get us, so that's not really an option. Well, if we just, defended our queen or something, then that wouldn't work either, because white would simply take the queen, so that's no good, because it's such a high value piece. We can't afford to do the P, the idea of P, so CPR is what I'm trying to do. Capture, protect, run away. P stands for protect. So we can't do P. So what we have to do is R. So the question is, I'm going to click on the queen, and we'll see all the possible moves that it can do. Which one of these moves would be the best? Pause the video and have a think. Well, I think let's consider back to what I said previously. If you can meet a threat in a more complex way, for example, if you can create a bigger threat than what your opponent is doing at the moment. So, for example, white is threatening. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. White is threatening the queen and also the rook. So if we can threaten something more than that, then it means that white shouldn't continue with his plan or her plan. Okay. The move that I hope you guys may have seen was this one, queen to d6. So I wonder why black plays this. Well, after this move, we could recapture. Okay, that would be possible, but there's an even better move. notice that the queen and the knight are working together to attack this pawn. So if we brought down the queen like this, then it would be checkmate, because the king does not have anywhere it can go safely. It can't capture the queen because of our knight. Okay, so that's a nice little sequence. I'll just show you it just very quickly one more time. Queen up here. Oh, no, not that one. Queen to d6. If white doesn't notice, then we can just do queen takes pawn. White probably should do a move such as this, pawn up there, to prevent the checkmate, and then we can just simply move our rook out the way. Something like this. Let's say here. Maybe that's a decent move. We'll see. Maybe here. Okay. So that's our puzzle. Well done if you spotted the answer to that. I'm now going to show you an opening, which I feel that it is useful for you guys to be aware of at the moment. I know from Epsom Junior Chess Club, which I run, that a lot of you tend to prefer this kind of opening. And I thought it would be useful to look at it in a bit more depth and explain some of the ideas. Now, the opening that I'm talking about is called the gioco piano. Okay? This is a very popular opening because essentially it's quite straightforward, I think. We're not trying to do anything particularly complicated. We're just developing our pieces. This is not something that we should do in chess very quickly. Okay? I wanted to show you a possibility for black. Now, black needs to develop this bishop and this knight in order to castle. I think there is a way of doing it which is slightly better. So there's two ways of doing it. Obviously, we can bring the bishop out first, or we can bring out the knight first. So you might think, well, what's the difference? Surely if I'm developing them both anyway, then that won't make any difference. But actually in chess, move order is fairly important, because if we do a certain move before another one, we can prepare the second move and make it stronger, and vice versa. If we do a move more quickly, yes, we gain time, but it will be less prepared. So if black does something like this, I would recommend going for something called the fried liver attack. Now, this is very possible. I'm not going to go into this now. You can look up fried liver attack on your under here. You can look it up under watch on Lichess, watch video library. So you can look up the fried liver attack. Basically, black has to do this move, but not everyone will know that, I feel, and we may get into a bit of trouble after this, and black will have to play this move. Okay. I think for black, it's not worth getting into that mess, because in a way that, you want a game that's solid. I would not regard this as a solid game. It's more like very tactical and quite aggressive on white's part. So in order to avoid all of this, don't play knight f6 straight away. Much better to follow the move that was played in this game between a chap called Vladimir Kramnik, who was an ex-world champion, and Wesley So. He's a top grandmaster. This move. So we get the bishop out first. So obviously not really here or here. Obviously, if we go here, then we're blocking this pawn from coming forward. If we go here, well, then the bishop becomes a bit of a target. We can just attack it or whatever. So that's not really what we want. Having the bishop here is good because it's aggressive, but it's also out of range of white's pieces. So white can't really attack the bishop immediately because neither of these moves are safe. Okay, so that is a move that's worth bearing in mind. Play this on your third move rather than your fourth move. Also, bishop e7 is worth consideration. You could play that, and that would be a very solid way to play. So nothing wrong with that at all. I wanted to show you this move as white, because we're sort of looking at this from white's point of view primarily. A bit of an odd move, and it's something that, I don't know, maybe some of you have seen the idea, but can you think to yourself, maybe pretend that I'm asking you the question, why would we play a move such as pawn to c3? Because surely that blocks our knight and things like that. Why would we play c3, do you think? Pause the video. I think there's kind of two reasons. The first reason is eventually to allow the move pawn to d4. Now, we could play that very quickly. Nothing wrong with playing that straight away. But I would also say that it's important to get our pieces out first. So we can play that move more or less when we want. It's just a case of making sure we castle, get these queenside pieces out first. So d4 is on the cards here. So that's the reason why c3 is so important. And you'll see this in the Roy Lopez as well, when you play bishop out to b5 on the third move instead of bishop to c4. This move again is very popular. And the other reason is that it's very possible that black could use the knight to attack this bishop. So later in the game, you'll see that white drops the bishop back, so that if black attacks this bishop using the knight, then what white can do is just drop that bishop back to safety. Because remember that bishops are perhaps slightly better than knights. I would say in 8 situations out of 10, the bishop is a tiny bit stronger. Think of the bishop worth 3¼ the knight being worth 3. And I think the two bishops together, working together, are perhaps even stronger than that, okay? So it's worth remembering that if we can save our bishop, then that's probably worth it, okay? So now black can bring the knight out without fearing the fried liver attack. I'm just going to show you what would happen if white did do that. But that's not something to be worried about, because black can just do this. Black can castle. And if white persists with this attack, well, you can count the material that goes off the board here. So black has lost a rook and a pawn, 6 points. White has lost a bishop and a knight, also worth 6 points. But notice black has got 3 minor pieces already in the game. White doesn't have any. We've also got this attack to worry about. So I think black is much better in this position. If your opponent does that, then you're going to be laughing, because this is already a good position for black. You're at an advantage. So we're not worried about this move because we can just castle, okay? So what white does is protects the pawn. We could play d4 immediately, but I think it's just a safer move, protecting the pawn from the knight. That knight was an aggressor. It was an aggressive piece, so we're just making sure we don't lose that pawn. Here, you could play the move a6. Now, I think both these moves, a6 and h6, I think they're both good, because if you play a6, then the idea is to push the pawn up to attack this bishop. Okay, so you're gaining space. Remember, I talked about time and space before in a previous lesson. You're gaining time against this bishop. You're also gaining space on the queen side. That's 2 things. I think also h6, which you'll see in a second, is certainly a very useful move, because it prevents any bishop from going to that space. As you can see, if the bishop ends up here, then we have this very annoying pin to deal with. So I think, personally, I may well decide to go h6 first, but black, who was a very, very strong grandmaster, decided to play that move instead, okay? White castles, of course, got a castle. Even grandmasters do it, so you've got to do it too. And I've got this very odd move that I wanted to show you. Think, why does black do this? Why such an odd move? Well, I think the idea is that eventually white is going to perhaps use a piece to protect this pawn, okay? And then white will push that pawn up. Now with the bishop on c5, white will gain time against that bishop, okay? So black is having to move the bishop again. So that's quite annoying. He doesn't really want to do that. So maybe what we'll do is we'll just move the bishop out the way so that it won't be attacked. Now that's quite a high level concept, but I'm showing it to you guys at intermediate level because you may see this sort of thing quite a few times. If you're looking at the game, a lot of strong players, they realize the danger and they eliminate the danger, they get rid of it. So I think that's really good defensive chess, because remember, chess is not just about attacking, but also about defending. And let's make sure that our bishop is safe. So again, white does the same thing. It's a bit of an odd move at first glance, but the idea is to save the bishop. If the black knight comes here, it controls this square where the bishop is, but also this one. So white would win that bishop for the knight, and that's probably good for black. We want black to, well, we're trying to avoid that if we're playing white. So again, if the knight comes here, we can just retreat the bishop. Let's see what happens next. So this time, this move pawn to d6 means that it's possible that black could bring this bishop out to g4, okay? And I think, again, this is a worthy move, because what we're doing is we're pinning this white knight. I would say it's not as effective as perhaps white's idea, but the idea here is that, okay, we're limiting the power of white's pieces. So if white wants to play d4, I'm going to get rid of all these arrows, not just to avoid the confusion. But if black does have his bishop there, then it means that this knight is no longer really helping control that d4 square, because it's pinned. If it moves, if it helps, recapture, for example, on d4, then black will just take white's queen. Okay, that's a very useful move. I'm just going to do a couple more moves, sorry, and then I'm going to let you guys maybe look through this game yourself. Now you can check it out on Lichess if you like, or you can type it into chessgames.com or onto Google. Type in Kramnik So 2017, and well, I think that's probably you'll probably find it quite easily. So just a couple more moves. Rook to e1. Rook to e1 is a developing move, protecting this pawn in the center, with the idea then of playing pawn to d4. So now that the pieces are in position, we've prepared the move d4 by making sure that black doesn't have any counter attacks like this, gaining the pawn, because we will just take it. And I think this is a good move because it stops white from coming to this square to do the pin. It means that black can develop in peace without having to worry too much. One more move, knight to d2. Looks like we're blocking the bishop. We are. But this knight, can you predict where it might go next? And maybe even in 2 moves' time. The idea, as we'll see in a second, is to bring it to f1. Very strange idea, but with knights, trying to think 2 moves ahead, okay? Not just 1, but 2, because that knight now can go to g3, and then perhaps later in here, maybe, to attack the pawns around black's king. So that's something that you can always bear in mind, okay? We'll pause the video there, or end it there. If you want, you can note down that position and you can follow the moves again. I'm just going to, well, I think it's easier if you just replay the video, actually. You can just follow the game again. And hopefully you understand now the idea of reacting to potential threats. So if you notice that a threat is about to take place, you can move a piece out the way in anticipation. So you know it's going to happen, so you can prepare for that. Okay. Again, I hope that was useful. And again, watch the video as many times as you need to and play it on a board. That will really help you. And I guess I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.